let's take a look at some of the feedback that we have now before we get into that. This is who? Oinde Sam, you're saying that Moi was a permanent feature in our lives for the period he ruled. His cabinet was almost but not impeccably balanced. Every face or tribe was seen. Kudos, His Excellency Moi.
All right, this is still on Twitter.
Let me read it for you. Engineer Lazaro, one unique character of Moi that hasn't been told is Moi was very keen to check on any of his cabinet's imminent powers. E.g., Isaac Kipruto was lifted up to tame the growing influence of the late Kipsigi's self-proclaimed king, Kipkalia Kones. I don't know how correct that is. Is that so?
I really wouldn't know what he had in mind. Nevertheless, we didn't quite see eye to eye with Kipkalia. Once in a while, we had a relationship that swung from being friends and local fights. Okay. And that happened almost in every other place in the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talking about Moi's generosity, do you think, okay, first of all, where was he getting all these things that he was giving out? Be it money, be it land, where was he getting it from?
Well, I don't think the money he was giving was way beyond his ability, even as a person, considering that he had been in parliament since 1955. And what is this we are talking about, his generosity? When he took over power, he was giving out money in Harambes, and those figures were not quite huge. 50,000, 100,000, that is in the late 70s when he just...
I remember hearing a clip announced on KBC that Rais Moi ametoa 500,000. That was a lot of money then.
Yeah,
and even parliamentarians never used to
that was quite later on. And considering that as a president, you've got also very many friends who would help you. We have seen that even as members of parliament, that when you go to your Harambes and you take money, but not all of it is from you, because your salary is only so much. But you get friends. So really you can't pin him down on those issues. These are matters of heart. That he was basically a generous person. Even when he was in parliament in 1955, the people who were with him in Nairobi here would say they were going to his house in Jericho. And they were being entertained.
Okay, Honorable Kipruto, here's the thing. As much as maybe then there were those Harambes that Honorable Ruto is talking about, and that has sort of spilled over into our current political style of leadership, Moi himself was a Christian. He kept on saying it. And the fact that he was involved then in the early days of the church, the early upbringing of church in Christian in the country. For example, I remember the likes of Reinhard Bonke, the televangelist who himself passed away in December. He was involved, and his administration was involved in making sure that those people, men and women of God, then came to Kenya and they were bringing Christianity there. So speaking of generosity, you look at how Moi handled men and women of God, how Moi handled the church, and you look at how now our current political leaders handle the church. They've turned it into another money-making machine, another political forum, another Harambee avenue. Perhaps a political lesson that our current leadership needs to learn, how Moi treated the church and how it's being treated now.
Well, I think I would be overstretching my capacity to imagine if I was to give a narrative of the entire period of, say, Moi, and what the current leadership is doing. What I can say without any measure of contradiction is that Moi was a true Christian, and whatever he did within his capacity, and he was able to do things not because of public, not to the gallery, but because he believed that somebody needed to be assisted, or certain things were done to assist the nation. And also some of these functions were more for mobilizing public opinion to shape it to a certain direction towards greater participation of the people in the decision making and also in development of their country. It was not just to give out money. What we need to learn from him is that let us not pretend. If you have to assist somebody, assist him because you feel there is a need. You feel that person deserves the assistance that you are meeting to him, but not just for the gallery, because pretense will catch up with you sooner than later.
Okay. Let me just chip in a little bit here. You see, the biggest challenge we have today is people who have just gone into public life trying to live the life of Moi, or trying to live a life that is really beyond them. This is the problem we are having. Nobody has ever said that you should not contribute to a church, or you should not contribute to a school project. But we are seeing a situation of badding, if I may call them that, badding politicians, or badding people who want to go into public life. And they immediately want to give the impression that they have the capacity of the likes of President Moi. So you see, these are follies that are hitting us. Now, on the issue of the church, he was a Christian. You will notice that Moi was virtually attending more of the AIC church. That was his church. All right. Occasionally, he would be he would worship with other denominations, but primarily, Moi was always with the AIC church. Now, we have seen right now a trend where we have a new development where people have also commercialized the matters of the church.
Right.
And this is why we are seeing all sorts of things. And hence, the question that I was bringing up earlier, that matters of public life, and when it came to matters of integrity and how you should conduct yourself in life, Moi was very specific that let us be very careful.
Because you served under his administration, and his administration was very involved in church matters. Why was that so close to his heart? For him and his administration
the spiritual aspect about Moi was very, very deep and very solid, because it's you had to be free and satisfied internally in terms of the spiritual before you could really come out of the way. So Moi believed, and it is true, really, that with a strong religious upbringing, a nation is going to be better. They are likely to have better integrity principles inculcated in them, and so forth. So he had every reason to go that. And look at the sponsorship of our schools. Who are the sponsors of schools in this country, if it is not the religious entity? And therefore, one would be calling forward on the religious teams, whether Islamic or whether Christian, to come forward and help bring in the strong values around integrity that I personally believe Moi stood for.
Honorable Mudavadi, so I remember watching a clip, I think it was in Machakos, of the president or the former president himself leading Harambee and receiving money from everyone who has come, announcing it, and then at the end he gives 2 million shillings and he says that this much is from the Vice President George Saitoti, this much is from so-and-so, this from Kamotho. How did he mobilize these resources? Did he ask you, or did you volunteer to make your contribution? How did that work?
This is when President Moi himself?
Yes.
Well, Moi was very clear, and I'll tell you an interesting thing. You know, there was a time when, the Harambes became really monotonous for some season. And every other person would go and announce and say, I've brought 100,000 from President Moi. There was a head of a parastatal here. There was a mayor here. There was a minister there. There was an ambassador here. Everybody was involved in Harambes, and everybody would say, I have brought a donation from President Moi. Until one day, I remember at cabinet, he said, you guys, you are making people think that I have all the money in this world. Wacha kujipendekeza na jina langu. Zile pesa mumeiba, ndio munatangaza ati mimi ndio nimewapatia. So how would I know that there are Harambes all over the country? 5 Harambes being donated to in Turkana in my name, 3 Harambes in Garissa in my name, 4 Harambes in Western Province in my name, and so forth. So when did I see the cards? When did I send this money? So this is part of the area where Harambes were being misused, and we've been seeing a resurgence of this kind of attitude. I think we better nip it in the bud,
But when we see him, because it's him announcing at the microphone, this is from the vice president, this is from Kamotho, I think he was the education minister.
No, him announcing then.
Yes.
The president would not lie in that kind of context.
So how was he getting it? Was he asking for it?
At that time, you would send the donation, or you would give him.
Would he personally ask?
Yes.
He would say, "Ninaenda Harambe."
Ah, okay.
Kama mnaweza munisaidie.
An open amount or a certain number?
It's up to you.
It's up to you.
All right. Yeah. It's up to you.
And there were instances even when he was going to Central Province, and there were a number of friends of his from Central Province who would raise money actually before they invite him to go for the Harambe, and they would actually help him with the money. And I saw it happen. That they were saying there is this particular project in our region, we would like you to visit us, and they would go around amongst themselves and raise some money and have him to do it. And we saw that quite a number of times, that actually the money was given out was not entirely from himself. Even when we had major Kano meetings, I was not one of the people who were able to donate, but I saw others like Mwangale and a number of others donating, bringing, saying, "Mzee, we know this is this weekend we've got this number of delegates coming. Required is 6 million." And they would all raise that money until it reaches that figure. Then we hold the mega Kasarani meetings.
Okay.
Then I was seeing them raising money themselves, because they would meet there in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, and they were raising money to go to Kasarani for the upcoming Kano meetings.
We will shortly be listening to a clip by the Deputy President on a personal gift he received from the President. But Honorable Kirwa, all these gifts, and I would imagine, humanly speaking, you might feel pressured that the Vice President has given this much, a certain assistant minister has given this much, so as a minister I also need to give something. Did this contribute to the culture of stealing of public resources to keep up with the Harambes that were at that time?
Not directly. Because we had also a system within Parliament. When I have a Harambe, let's say in my constituency, you would go to friends. Somebody gives you 100 shillings, another one 1,000, and so forth. And the donations that we used to give at that time were not so heavy.
Right.
It was 5,000 compared to a salary of 18,000 when I entered Parliament. So to get that 5,000, it was like a merry-go-round. You go to colleagues, some were mean, some were generous, and at the end of the day you have like 2,000 from colleagues, you remove 1,000 from your own mileage claims, and you take to the constituency, and people were very appreciative. That is how we raised the money. As to whether that was directly correlated to splendor of public resources is not entirely true. Some of us did not have capacity to access public resources as members of Parliament.
All right. So here is a clip that we'd like to play for you of Deputy President William Ruto discussing the issue of land.
As university students, we went to see him at one point, and we asked him to give us a piece of land in Eldoret, and he actually did. What for? And we sold the piece of land. And with that piece of land, I remember I bought my first car.
Was it his personal? It was his personal property that he gave you?
No, it was not. It was there were pieces of land that were being given for development in Eldoret town. So as university students, 4 of us went, and he gave us one plot. Because we asked him, say, please help us. So he said, okay. He asked somebody, please help these young people.
I know the times have changed, but many would question whether those were procedural ways of assisting people to do business.
I think they were procedural ways. I do not think that Moi went out of his way to do something illegal. And even if maybe people later went and did things the wrong way, that was not Moi's thinking. Moi just wanted to help, and he wanted to help people within the law.
All right, so we have a land economist in studio, the former Vice President, and that he called somebody and told him to assist us. There was a lot of this culture, and even now it still exists. When you read the Ndungu report, you see a lot of parcels of land that were given out illegally, and quite a bit of it even some names of politicians who served in that government. And when you look around, the politicians and the Kanu government are wealthy. I'm not talking about yourselves. but are wealthy. They have immense parcels of land. I mean, how did this happen to the extent that land that didn't belong to anybody was given out to maybe undeserving politicians?
Well, this is a complex one, because the constitution that was in place at that time gave certain latitudes that are not present today in the current constitution. And the issue of alienation of land by the government to its citizens is not new. I mean, if you go into what you would call settlement schemes in so many places, this was all part of alienation of land. In the first government of this country, we have very many senior citizens who were supported and land was alienated to them by the first government. They would be given land either in Kitale or in Wasingishu or in the coast or in other places. We have records of this. And I think even the Ndugu report does capture some of that, those alienations. I think what became an issue in the subsequent years is that there were some who may not have been genuinely deserving. And then it became a rapid process where a process that would have been done so that a needy person or needy individuals are the ones that are given priority. Land was seen as the quickest way for people to cash in. So we cannot rule out the fact that some elements then took an advantage of this and got a lot of land allocated too rapidly, and in some areas then it started encroaching on lands that were clearly designated for other uses. Hence that challenge. So indeed, these are some of the aspects that we would all as a nation admit that some of the laws were then misused.
Honorable Ruto, yes, and I was actually coming to you even as you're giving your point of discussion here. When you get such a gift from the late president, such as, for example, land, doesn't that not put a certain fear in you to deliver? Because given his style of leadership then?
Let me first tell you that look at the question of land in a proper context of just the post-independence Kenya. When the African governments were taking over, and there were huge tracts of land which were in the hands of the now living settlers, and that needed to be Africanized. Obviously, the first concern of the governments that after independence was settling people in all that land. Some of them would have to repay through the SFT. It was not just plain land that you get and you have no obligations. If the land required certain payments, that is up to you. It was just an allocation. I also remember one area in which I closely got concerned about, where people were settled in land, and in my constituency and a number of constituencies around our area, they were looking for the most needy and taking them there. And the experience we quickly got, and Moi got concerned, was that we had settled with people and there was no one even to buy the posho meal. The posho mills. He was told one morning that some women were killed, and when we checked, it was because they were trekking about 11 kilometers to go and have their unga ground and brought back. So then he started saying, look, what we must do is to mix people. That there must be people to give others even kibarua. That you don't just take very poor people into one area and you have not even one person who can buy a matatu, because he was wondering how comes they trek that long. So there are no matatus.
When you get a gift of that magnitude, such as land from the president, doesn't that not put
I want you to understand first that he was more concerned about the ordinary Kenyans having a mix with those who would offer employment at the local level and other services, including bringing even Dukas to those areas. Okay. So you will have to understand where he was coming from. When you start judging what was happening in 1979, 1982, 1985, or even 1967, and you are in the comfort of the 21st century, you will not be able to judge properly unless you have all the facts around that. Okay. So I was not given land personally anywhere being told this has been a gift to you. He would not go out of his way to do that. But I know, like when the vice president is saying, alikuwa kijana anatoka shule. There was nothing he was expected to do. I think he was one of those fellows who were brave enough to ask him, how about helping us? You have seen the current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, saying a certain percentage of contracts be allocated to the youth. There is a certain concern when youths just finish college and they have nothing to do. And you can see them quite, they are talking to you. And it is a one-off situation. I think maybe the deputy president was, in the mind of Moi was that he was seeing these young people once that day, that he didn't know that they would develop a certain connection continuously. So in my own view, having worked with him, I could see what was working around his mind, that he really wanted to help people.
All right, I want us to take a break, but before we do, Honorable Kirwa, if the young people, like he says, were assisted by the president because they were needy, didn't we miss an opportunity to address the situation of the young people, a problem that we're still dealing with to date?
Well, I think the case of the deputy president is what I can say one-off issue. But what we need to do when we look for the issue of land, remember at the beginning of time, all land was under the crown. That is under the queen. And that transition came to the president. And the president donated that power, part of that power, to the Commission of Lands to dispense with issues of land. And the first generation of settlement activities was done through what we call SFT, that my colleagues have said. The British, in exchange for the parcels of land that were being occupied by the white settlers, gave us a loan. And that loan was used to midwife the process or buying off the British development that they had done on the parcels of land and settling Africans to pay that loan for 33 years. Now, some clever fellows were able to use that opportunity. And there was also another set of land that was being sold, bought by companies. Like there was the Quataniro and many other companies that bought land. And that is when other individuals came in to buy. That's why you hear some people have, let's say, thousands of acres. Right. So to have land is not a crime. Now, the plot that the deputy president was talking about is about a plot. There are so many plots in so many municipalities. Some of them were site and surveys that you have a plot, you can choose to build a house or you can build a shop. And but some people were able to transit. You get a plot, but then you sell it and you make some little money, you start your business. Right. So whatever reasons you give to the president and the use of that particular plot may be at variance with the position held earlier.
Okay. All right, we will continue with that conversation after this break, but we take a break with one member of parliament or former member of parliament that served in Baringo County. This is Musa Sirma, who still feels that since Moi left, development stalled in Baringo County.
All the developments which are there in Baringo currently is because of him. Right. The schools, the churches, the roads, name them, even the water. Everything is where Moi left. Right. Everything is stalled from that time to this date. But I think people thought possibly Baringo was already done after Moi. But since nothing has been done since so far, I think we still want to ask people that where Moi left, even the population has changed, the number of people, and the services also have gone, it is now diminishing in terms of how many, 1-to-1 or